Today we're going to be learning Sukkah Daf Nun Hey, second to last daf, reminding everyone to look forward to the Siyum tomorrow. Lots of Shiurim will be coming your way. Siyum Sukkah on the go. So take it with you where you want, listen on your way, where you're going, in typical Sukkah style. Today's daf is sponsored by David Tanner in honor of his wife, Naomi Shama Esses. I am so proud of you for having started and staying with Daf Yomi. Ezrat Hashem, we merit to share many more anniversaries together, ever increasing our study of Torah and basking in its light. And anonymously for the Yurtzeit of Yisrael, Meir ben Aryezef HaKohen, Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen Kagan Chafetz Chaim, which will be tomorrow. Okay, we're going to start now at the bottom of Nun Dalet Amud Bet, just to do a quick review. We saw this Mishnah, which did all this numbering, which is possibly the reason Safrai claims that's the reason why we're going to have the next upcoming Mishnah, which is also all about numbers. Again, I as promised yesterday, the addition of the numbers is simple. The understanding of it is a little more complicated, but definitely the numbers and how they add up isn't the most complicated calculations. But we had yesterday this description that it's never less than 21 blasts of the trumpet in the temple, never more than 48, to which we had a number of questions. First, we also saw a different opinion of Rabbi Acha bar Chanina from the south, who came and said that there's this braita that seems to indicate that they did, every time there was a musaf, they did additional blasts for each. If there were multiple musaf offerings, like Rosh Hashanah that fell on Shabbat, then you would do additional blasts for each one separately, as opposed to our Mishnah, which seemed to indicate only one. And then we started with that. We started asking, but then the Mishnah should have given other examples, to which he explains, well, Tana Bashir. There are really other examples, but the Braita, the author of our Mishnah, left those off. And then we had to come figure out, well, if he left one off, he must have left more than one off, which would be the case. And we came up with some cases. Since one of the cases dealt with Erev Pesach, then the Gemara proceeded to ask another question, which is, wait a minute, if you're going to add this unique thing about Erev Pesach and all the different kitot and how they said they did the blast with Hallel and that adds on all these other ones, then we can find a case, which is, forget about Rabbi Acha. It makes the Mishnah look difficult because the Mishnah said there's no more than 48 and we could get to either 51 or 57. And then we dealt with that by saying, and that was toward the end of the daf, well, the Mishnah didn't talk about cases that happen once every few years. It only talked about cases that happen every single year, to which they asked, well, what about, there could be a case of Sukkot even, which is an exception to the rule, right? Which has even more, if it's Erev Shabbat and all that. And then they say, oh, first day of Sukkot would never fall on Erev Shabbat. And then there was a whole debate, could it or couldn't it? And that really was this interesting debate about, can the rabbis really determine and play with the calendar to get it to the way they want, which we know is the case, because it never happens anymore. But in those days, there was this debate, a fundamental debate between Acherim and the rabbis about whether we could fix the calendar or not. So that was a bit of a summary of yesterday, which is now going to lead into today, which is we ended the daf with a question on Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. And we're now going to have 3 questions from Braitot on Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. The structure is going to be, the first one we have an answer for, which we already answered, although we're kind of in the middle of it. So we'll go back to that. The second 2 are not going to have answers, in which case we're going to basically end up rejecting Rabbi Acha and then kind of asking, well, then what happened to the Braita he brought? What do we do with it? So we'll get to that later. Meitive. So just to review from the end of yesterday's daf, we brought up this case where Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat, and it says we push off the Shiur of Shabbat and we only do the Shiur of Rosh Chodesh, to which we said, well, it makes no sense. If we're going to do extra blasts, according to Rabbi Acha, then of course you're going to do the extra Shiur. Because remember, the song and the blast went together. So Rav Safra said, oh, doche really means it comes first. Rosh Chodesh comes first, to which the Gemara said, why would Rosh Chodesh come first? Don't we have a principle? Whatever normally happens is what goes first. So Shabbat comes much more frequently, whatever's more frequent. Tadir v'she'eno tadir kodim. If you have something frequent and less frequent, it's used many times in halacha. It should always go with the more frequent. Shabbat should be first. To which the Gemara answered, we need to show everyone that it's Rosh Chodesh today. We want to make a big statement about it. So therefore we do Rosh Chodesh first. To which the Gemara asks, wait a minute. We're starting now at the very end of the fourth to last line. Hayekera avdina, hayekera achrita avdina. But we already do something different in the temple besides the song. We do something else. Meaning, why do you need 2 signs that it's Rosh Chodesh? What are they? Ditnan, as it says in the Mishnah, and this is something we already learned, by the way, in Shkalim. Chelbei tamid shel shachal nitanim mechatzi kevesh ulamata b'mizrach. B'shel musafim nitanim mechatzi kevesh ulamata b'ma'arav. If you remember, we talked about the Kohanim going up the ramp and they're bringing all the parts of the animal that they're supposed to be burning from those sacrifices. When they bring the daily sacrifice, where do they put it? On the bottom half of the ramp. Remember, there was this big ramp going up the altar. It goes from the floor to the height of the altar, which is 9 cubits, the height. That ramp goes up. So on the bottom half, on the eastern side, we're going to put the daily. Shel musafim, the extra sacrifices, nitanim mechatzi kevesh ulamata b'ma'arav. We're going to put it on the second bottom half of the ramp on the western side. Now, why are we doing it on different sides? Well, because the Kohanim who bring it up need to know which one are they doing. When part bring it up, part then bring it up to the top, right? Some bring it from where they slaughtered it and cut it up and took off the hide and all that. Then some bring it to there, and then others bring it up. Remember, we wanted Berov Mahadra Melech. We wanted as many people involved. So they did it in stages. So where did they leave it? Bottom half of the ramp, one on the east, one on the west, to distinguish. Shel Rashi Chodashim, but when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, what do? Nitanim tachat karkov mizbeach ulamata. Okay, there were different debates. What exactly is the karkov? What does this mean? Rashi explains it means 2/3 of the way up, which is the height of the karkov. The karkov, according to some interpretations, is the sovev. That's the part that's at the height of 6 cubits. So at that height on the ramp, which is 6 cubits also, right? Remember, the ramp goes all the way up to the 9. So 2/3 of the way up the ramp, we're going to put those parts, which means that they're higher. Some people explain that it's actually on the altar itself, not Tachat HaKarkov is on the altar itself, not on the ramp. Either which way, it's in a high location. Why is that? So that everybody knows that it's Rosh Chodesh today. So people know when Rosh Chodesh is. Okay, we want to make a big statement about it. So if we already do that, why do we need to do the Shiur? So, Becky, this relates to what you're saying. We have 2 different ways of people seeing. Ones who see that one, the other ones who see the other one, see the other one. It's interesting that they use seeing. Chaze is to see in both cases, because one is seeing and one is hearing, which actually makes sense, right? Some people might be seeing and other people might be hearing because it's the song. The song is what people are going to hear. You could be standing in the temple courtyard and you might hear the song, but you might not see inside. So it's interesting. I would have thought that the Gemara would have said, when you see, when you hear, but they obviously, maybe they even mean that. They're just saying some will see this, some will see that. They use the word seeing, not exactly in its real, doesn't really mean see, because you can't see the song. Unless you can read lips and then you see the Levium and you can see what they're saying. But likely if you could do that, you could hear them, unless of course you can't hear. Okay, next. So that was the first question on Rabbi Acha, but we resolved it because we said it doesn't mean you only said the Shiur of Rosh Chodesh. It just means you said the Shiur of Rosh Chodesh before Shabbat, to which we asked all sorts of questions. Why would you do that? And we answered, because we want everyone to know. And then why would you? We already know some other way. We have 2 ways that people know. Meitive. Another braita that creates a difficulty with Rabbi Acha. Ditame Rava bar Shmuel. Yachol kashem shetokin al Shabbat b'fnei atzmo v'al Rosh Chodesh b'fnei atzmo. Just like if Shabbat comes on its own, that's b'fnei atzmo. Shabbat comes by itself. You blow the trumpets, and Rosh Chodesh you blow the trumpets. You might have thought, just like on Shabbat you blow the trumpets when it comes on a regular day, when Shabbat is no special day. And meaning it's not a holiday or a Rosh Chodesh or anything. And you blow the trumpets when Rosh Chodesh comes in, it's just Rosh Chodesh. You might have thought, remember, Yachol starts always, you might have thought, and it's always going to say, but not. You took in al kol musaf umusaf. So maybe when they come together, you have separate blasts for this one and separate blasts for that one. So what they're doing is they're raising the suggestion that Rabbi Acha says, but they're going to reject it. So it's obviously going to go against Rabbi Acha. Talmud Lamar, therefore the verse says, and on your new moons. Okay, not very clear how that proves it, but it's very clear though that the Braita says we do not do that, because it says you might have thought we do that, therefore the verse comes to teach we don't. So now the Gemara says, Tiyufta to Rabbi Acha Tiyufta. And in fact, we have a clear refutation for what Rabbi Acha says. So now the Gemara is going to answer what I said was kind of difficult, which is how do we get from Rashi Chodeshechem to the answer to our question that you only do for one and not for, right? You only blow one set of blasts, even if there are multiple additional sacrifices. So my Talmud, how did they learn it from that verse? By the way, sometimes they say my mashma, and sometimes they say my Talmud. It means the same thing. It means how do we get from that verse to, and how did they learn it from there? Amar Abaye, Amar Ka, uverashe chodshechem, because it says, and on your new moons, hukshuch kol chodashim kulam zelazeh. It's to say, and on your new moons, right? These are the sacrifices that you bring. Or sorry, this is, by the way, the verse, when it says, and you blow the blast on Rashi Chodashim, which means you blow the blast on the Rashi Chodashim, same thing every month. Doesn't matter if it's Shabbat, doesn't matter if it's not Shabbat, it's always going to be the same. That teaches you there's no additional ones. Rav Ashi Amar, Ktiv Chod Shechem. Okay, it doesn't say Chod Shechem. It's written in the Torah as Chod Shechem, which doesn't have the Yud. Now, the Yud makes it months, plural. Okay, that's Chod Shechem, your. Yours is plural no matter what. But your, which is the Jewish people's, Chodashim, months. That's the way the word translates. But if you get rid of that Yud, which is the way it's written in the Torah, even though it's not pronounced that way, it's written as Chod Shechem, which means your month, singular. So he says, Uchtiv birashe. But when it says, and the firsts, right, the Rashi Chodashim. So Rashi is the first, plural. Months is singular. So something doesn't match. You can either have Rosh Chodesh or Rashi Chodashim. You wouldn't have Rashi Chodesh. Doesn't make sense. So they say, Eze Chodesh sheyesh lo shnei rashim. So what it sounds like, there's 1 month. It's a month that could have 2 heads to it, 2 first days. What's the only month that has that? Havei omer ze Rosh Hashanah, because we celebrate Rosh Hashanah 2 days, as if they're both. Now, we actually don't celebrate as if they're both Aleph b'Tishrei, but it's kind of commemorating as if they could be both the first of Tishrei. So it has 2 heads of the month. And therefore, Amar Rachmana Chod Shechem Chadi. But the Torah tells us it's like 1 month. Okay, it's like 1. So in other words, it's Rosh Hashanah that has 2 heads, but it's really like 1, which means that we're going to, okay, now here it's a little tricky. We're trying to get to that you only do 1 Korban Musaf, but what they're going to say is that it's still, what it shows is it's singular to say we're only going to do 1 set of blasts. Okay, that's one way to understand it. Ve'od. So we basically had until now, again, that was our second question against Rabbi Acha. We didn't resolve it. We left it with a tiyuvta, meaning it's difficult. There is no real good answer because this says very clearly against Rabbi Acha. So we don't know what he does with the Braita because he's an Amora and he can't really disagree with the Braita. Ve'od Tanya. And furthermore, we're going to have another problem with him. What is it? There's another Braita that says, Ubecholosh HaMoed, Barishon Mahayu Omrim. Okay, I'll actually bring up the sheet for today's sheet. I'll just show you. I charted it out here to make it a little bit easier about the days. These are the days of Chol HaMoed. What Mizmor Tehillim we say? Okay, there's actually an interesting debate. Rashi and others say that some of these verses are verses quoted from the middle of a section of Tehillim, of a chapter. And it really means that you say the entire chapter. The Ritva actually says, no, you say that verse or the verses around there. And he doesn't view it the way Rashi does, but let's just assume we mean the whole Mizmor. Okay, so now we have special shiur every day that they would say on Chol HaMoed. So b'cholosh HaMoed, barisham ha'ayu omrim, havu la'Hashem b'nei Elim. This is what we say in Kabbalat Shabbat, which is Perek Kaftet of Tehillim. Next, b'sheni ha'ayu omrim, U'lerasha amar Elohim, which is a verse from chapter 50, Perek Nun. It's actually in the middle of chapter 50, but again, it means the whole thing. B'shlishim ha'ayu omrim, mi yakun li'im mireim, which is the second. Now, this is the only one that's split. This one and the next one are 2 halves of the same Mizmor Tehillim. So on this third day of Chol HaMoed, you say the second half of Perek Tzadi Dalid, 94. And b'revi'im ha'ayu omrim binu bo'arim ba'am. On Wednesday, not Wednesday, on the 4th day of Chol HaMoed, you would say the first half of that Mizmor Tehillim. And then b'chamishim ha'ayu omrim hasiroti misevel shechmo. Okay, you would say Perek Pe Aleph, 81. Bashishima yombrim yimotu kol mosei aretz. Okay, then on the 6th day, you would say that. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the holiday because there's 6 days of Chol HaMoed. Rashi goes into a long description. What's unique about all these and why are they done on each day? I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can read Rashi. You can read those footnotes about it if you have Gemaras with footnotes. Anyway, the main thing that's important for these purposes is that the 4th day, Binu Bo'arim Ba'am seems to have a theme about the Aniyim, okay, about poor people. And what Rashi explains is already on the 4th day in, you're getting close to going home. And when you go home, you're going to be harvesting your crop because it's the harvest. And we want to remind you, right, we're kind of, as you're getting ready, right, it's like today's in Israel, the day before school starts, right? So we've been spending the last few days kind of getting ready for school and thinking about it and planning. And also, right, here, you're planning for going home a few days before. You already start planning, and we want to plant in your head, no pun intended, the idea about when you harvest your crops, you really have to give to the poor people. So that's the idea. Then, and it's important to see, because in a minute we're going to see a machloket about it, where they switch the order, and that one's actually said on day number 5, which also makes sense because he might think, no, closer to the day is a better off plan of reminding people about Matznot Aniyim, because they might forget already if you do it too early. So that's an interesting debate in and of itself. Okay, I mean, there are some undercurrents of Matznot Aniyim, I think in all of them, or many of them. We talked about that before, that was one of the differences between the Shiur on Shmini Atzeret and the Shiurim on these days. Anyway, you can look at Rashi and see the more descriptions of the differences there. I don't want to get into that for today. But now, because it's a little too off our topic, what happens now? Here's the main point. Why did we bring this? We want to show that you don't say 2 musafim when you have 2 things going on. Now remember, the shiur, the song, is connected to the blasts. So you don't blow the trumpet twice when you have 2 different musafim. And here also, we're going to see that you don't do the shiur twice if you have 2 different days. So im chal Shabbat be'echad mehem yimotu yidacheh. If Shabbat falls out on one of them, then we say the special mizmor for Shabbat and we push off the yimotu. We don't say the last day. The last day gets pushed off. In other words, wherever Shabbat comes out, if Shabbat comes out on the 1st day, it doesn't matter because this is only Chol HaMoed. But if it comes out on the 2nd day, the 3rd day, the 4th day, right, everything gets pushed off a day. Okay, and then the last one drops entirely. And thank you for reminding me. Someone just wrote in the chat. I wanted to point this out, which is there's a big machloket between the Ari and the Gra about what we do in the Shiur Shel Yom. The Shiur Shel Yom is a later development, right? The fact that we say every day, these are the songs that the Levites sang in the temple. The Ari had it that every day, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, you always have a special one for that day of the week. And you do that even throughout the Chagim. And the Gra said, no, we should go back and do it the way they did it in the temple. And on the holidays, we should say the special mizmor for that day that they said in the temple. And therefore, if you look at Machzorim, and if you've gone to different shuls do different things, whether they say the special mizmor for that day that was sung in the temple, or do they have the everyday that we do. So there's a debate about it, which is an interesting debate. Rav Safra, manach behu simana. He made a way for you to remember, a mnemonic. So what do? Hom bahe. Okay, and I put it on the sheet. Okay, I can pull it up right now so you can see, right, that we have hey havu, vav l'rasha u'lerasha, mem miyakum, bet binu bo'arim, hey hasiroti, yud yimotu. Hom behe. Okay, that's how you remember it. Rav Papa manach behu simana, hom habe. He switched days 4 and 5, and he had Hasiroti first and Binu Bo'arim second, which, as I mentioned before, it was a possible reason as to why he wanted the one that says clearly about giving gifts to poor people to be later in the week. So you remember, so he had a different siman. This simanech, and by the way, you would understand if Shabbat comes out in the middle, that's going to be the last one, right? It's second to last. If it was last, it would be knocked off entirely when Shabbat comes out in the middle of the week. So therefore, it makes sense also that you put second to last and not last entirely because the last one got knocked off. Now, here's a good, funny, cute thing. This simanech, how do you remember? Who said what? Well, there's a word that they knew that we don't know, but I don't know. I don't remember her hearing this term, although I did when I Googled it. I found that there was a commentary called the Ambuhe de Safre. That was his name. Like that's what he went by. That was his book he wrote. But the way you remember this is by the word Ambuhe de Safre. Rav Safra was the one who said Hambahe. Hambahe sounds like Ambuhi because the bet comes before the hay later in the word. And that's how you remember it. So now what's interesting about this? What is Ambuhe de Safre? So there's a few different explanations, but I kind of like Rashi, and I'm going to bring Rashi. Rashi says, Ambuhe de Safre, Gedudei anashim v'nashim regilim lahalech b'mavoy shamalamdei tinokot. Outside the Safre are the teachers, like from the word Sofrim and book people. The teachers are the ones who their alleyways where their schools are the most populated. Why is that? Because Shatinokot, because all the children go there, ve'avotehem, ve'imotehem, and their fathers and their mothers. Interesting things, right? This is like, I won't go out in my car at a certain time when all the schools are getting out, there's going to be tons of traffic around outside the schools, right? Tons of people always congregating outside school buildings at certain times or outside the ganim, the nurseries. It's always very crowded. So what do you see here? It's this idea that the schools, that's where lots of people come. First of all, it mentions fathers and mothers. Clearly, fathers and mothers were picking up their children from school, not just a job, right? I saw a whole issue about a WhatsApp. A parent was complaining that the teacher made it only for the mothers, not the fathers, right? This is always classic. They put only the mothers on the list as if they're the ones responsible for everything, for knowing all the messages, and the fathers not. Anyway, seems here the fathers and the mothers came to pick them up. And this idea of traffic by schools, we're all very familiar with that. If you've ever gone to pick up a child from school or kindergarten or something like that, what a traffic jam there is. That's what this amboi means, masses of people, crowds at the Safre, at the school. Okay, good, appropriate for beginning of school year. So in the end, what do we have here? Back to our problem, which is that when Shabbat falls out on the Chol HaMoed, we skip the Shiur of Chol HaMoed and we only say the Shiur of Shabbat. That would imply also only one set of trumpet blasts. To which the Gemara says, Tiyufta de Rabbi Acha bar Chanina Tiyufta. So we basically knocked out his approach from two different brightot. Now the Gemara asks, Rabbi Acha bar Chanina kra umatnita kamar, but he had a pasuk to prove his point. Remember, the kohanim yitzkeu, there was an extra tzkiah there, and why do we need it? It must be to say that there were special ones for every musaf, and there was a braita, right? Umatnita kamar, and it said so in a braita, exactly what he said. Now, not exactly. Let's go back for a minute. What did it say? In the end, it said, Matzah mulomar yitzkeu, hakol, I'm right in the middle of Nun Dalet Amud Aleph, hakol lefi hamusafim tokim, which wasn't clear what that meant. And then the Gemara said, Hu tanela, he brought this braita, and Vihu Amrala, and he explained, what does it mean? Hakol lefi hamusafim tokim, which literally means everyone blows according to the musaf, which he explained to mean every musaf gets its own blasts. To which the Gemara says, well, we can explain that some other way, and we're going to give two other explanations of what that statement means. When there's a multiple minchas, so there's multiple libations, it's going to take them a little longer to do the libation. So what do? They stretch out. You ever go tzkiya gdola and they stretch out that tzkiya a very long time? They stretch out the blasts of the trumpet so that they last until they're finished with the nisachim, with the libations. Rabbanit de Kesari, Mishmei de Rabbi Acha Amre, Lomar Shemarbim B'Tokim. They have multiple people blowing the trumpets. We add extra trumpet blowers. They all blow the same number of blasts, but they blow more people blow. That's what we do when there's more musafim. We bring extra shofar trumpet blowers. Okay. So that ends our section with Rabbi Chanina. But now there's another issue, which is Anandi Itlan Shrei Yomi. We have 2 days, okay? Meaning us outside of Israel. What do? We have 2 days. So what shiur do we say on what day, right? We don't know the second day of Chol HaMoed, the first day of Chol HaMoed, second day of the holiday, is actually not Chol HaMoed for us. It's Yantif, because we do 2 days of Yantif. So when we get to day number 3, do we say what they said on day number 2? Or do we, what are the options? So what do they say? Sheni Yidache. Abaye says Sheni Yidache. We skip day number 2, because what's the issue? You can't say a Shiur of Chol HaMoed on day number, you can't say a Shiur of Chol HaMoed on day number 2, because day number 2, you think is a holiday. You're keeping it as if it's a Yantif. If you do something of Chol HaMoed, people are going to say, oh, this isn't really Yantif. We're always concerned, Zilzul Yom Tov. They're going to not take Yantif seriously. So clearly you don't say what you would normally say on the second day of the holiday, which is the first day of Chol HaMoed. You wouldn't say that on Yantif, even second day Yantif. So you just skip that day and you start day number 3, which is your first day of Chol HaMoed, is treated as if it's day number 1. Rava Amar Shvi'i Dache. He says, no, you skip the last one. Everything gets moved a day. So what you would normally do, let's say in Israel on day number 2, moves to day number 3. And then you're going to basically have one less. So you're going to get rid of the 7th. Tanya Kavate de Rava, and here's a bright to the proof Rava, which is exactly what we saw before. We already have a precedent for pushing off the last one. So let's push off the last one here as well. Ameimar brings a third option. He says, what do? We do both. We say the one for the second day and the one for the third day on day number 3. And on day number 4, we say, right, we do that until we get to Shmini Atzeret, where we don't say anything double, because again, it's the same problem of holiday. And this, by the way, is what we do in davening, where on the Musaf, right, when we get to Musaf and also in Kriyat Torah, we do a repeat, right? Kriyat Torah, it's a little more complicated. I'm not going to get into that right now, but we basically say both days of, right, we say Bayom HaSheni and Bayom HaShlishi, for example. Okay, we say both. Whereas on Yantif, we just treat it as if the second day is really just the first day, because we want to say this is just Yantif. After that, we start saying we do multiple readings because of that. Okay, and that's how we do it, like he suggests. So there's 3 possible answers for what we do. New Mishnah. Now we're moving, as I said, Safrai claims that this is here because it's another counting and numbers and like the previous Mishnah. But also we haven't really talked about the parim of the Chag, right? It's interesting. It's kind of the reverse of Yoma. Yoma was all Masechet, all about the temple, right? And we did, right? Everything was the temple. And at the end, it was, okay, well, what do we do on Yom Kippur today? What about the part that relates to all times, fasting and all that? In this Masechet, it's Sukkah, Lulav, right, which are all relevant nowadays. And the last chapter is all about what they did in the temple, right, or toward the end, right, even a little before the last chapter. But mostly the last chapter is all about what happened in the temple. And here we finally, at the very end, we get to the sacrifices, okay, which again, on Yoma is really at the very beginning. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag, hayu sham 13 parim, elim shnayim b'seir echad. Nishtayru sham yudalik kvasim l'shmone mishmahot. Okay, before we start, let's go back and explain. There's 2 things we need to know here. First of all, there were 24 groups of Kohanim. They were split up into 24 groups. Okay, in earlier times, it was 8, then it moved to more. Eventually, it got to 24, the more Kohanim there were. And they would serve twice a year. And in addition, they would all come on the holidays. Okay, there's a little bit of a problem with the numbers, which is we're going to see from these 2 Mishnayot that the ones who served on the holiday, the ones whose week it was to serve on the holiday, also had a special status that week. They were also those weeks were overlapping. In other words, it was counted both as a regular week, and as yes, a regular Kohen had a mishmar there, and in addition, everybody came to the temple. Okay, which means that it really only covers 48 weeks a year. I don't know what happened the other weeks. So either they started again, it wasn't a full year, but it's weird because they always talk about how 24 came a year. So I have a bit of a question about that I haven't resolved. But let's just say 48, right? They each came twice a year. When you come to the temple, you get to eat different things like the lechem apanim, the showbread. It gets split between the mishmar nechnas and the mishmar yotzei because they do the switch on Shabbat. We're going to talk about that more tomorrow. Then you get to eat, you get the hides of all the animals that get entirely burnt on the altar. You get to eat the parts of the meat when people bring sacrifices and there's meats that you can eat, then you get to eat them. You get all these parts of the animals. Okay, there's other parts that you get as well. We're not going to get into all the details. But there's 2 issues here. Number 1 is who gets to do what job. We know from Yoma how complicated that was and how they instituted lotteries. And number 2, who gets to eat what part. So the first Mishnah relates to the lotteries, the second to who eats what. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Hayusham. So what are the animals that were here? Okay, so now we're going to start with, I'm going to pull up the chart. It's very helpful. I'm going to see all the animals that were there. So we have Parim 13, Elim 2, Seirizim 1, Lechatat. Okay, those are the sacrifices. Plus there were 14 kfasim also that were brought le'olah with the korban of Sukkot. So now, right, the Seirizim is the one that's given every holiday, right? And the Parim are the unique ones for this holiday. Anyway, these are what we do. So, right, the Parim, Elim, and Kfasim are special numbers for Sukkot. The Parim are the most famous because we talked about already. We start with 13, we go down day number 2 to 12, day number 3 to 11, then 10, 9, 8, 7. And that's going to affect our number system here because everything else stays the same. I'm ignoring now day number 8. We'll get to that after. So if you take the Parim, the Elim, and the Seirizim, you get all together to 16. So that was split by 16 mishmarot, okay, for the first 3. Now, you're left with 14 kfasim that need to be slaughtered and dealt with. Everybody, each mishmar, each group gets an animal. So you first 16 get Parim, Elim, and Seirizim. Next, you have kfasim, 14 of them. But how many mishmarot are left? Only 8. So now it's basically a simple math. How do you divide 14 by 8? So 6 people, we're going to read this inside now. There's 14 animals left for 8 mishmarot. B'yom Rishon, so on the first day, what happens? Since you have 8 and you want to split it by 14, Shishama Klevim Shnaim Shnaim, 6 of them. Okay, I want you to get the first one clear. After that, we're going to go through the other ones very quickly because it's going to be very obvious. 6 of them are going to do 2 animals each. That gets you to 12. You're left with 2 more. So Ash'ar Echad Echad. The other 2 groups are going to only do 1. So you end up here. Everybody gets an animal, and 6 groups are going to get 2 of the kfasim, 2 of the lambs. Basheni, now what happens on the next day? We already have 1 less bull. So we take down the bulls, the parim, to 12. You're going to end up with 15 altogether, right? And therefore, how many are left to do the 14 kfasim? You're left with 9. So how are you going to split 9? Basheni, on the second day, chamishama klivim shnayim shnayim. 5 are going to do 2, and hashar echad, and 4 of them are going to do only 1. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 1 is 4. 10 plus 4, 14. And that's how you're going to fill in the 4 kfasim. Okay, so this is going to keep going every day. Bashlishi, where you only have 13 between the parim, elim, and seirizim. Then arba'a makrivim shnayim shnayim. So you're only left with 11, right? What do we have to? Sorry, Bashlishi, you're left with 10. How are you going to split 10? By 14. So again, arba'a makrivim shnayim shnayim. 4 will do 2. Hashar echad echad. B'revi'i. Okay, you wonder why the Mishnah went into all this detail. It's pretty obvious at this point. On the 4th day, what happens? We have, I think I said the wrong number before, that I was in day number 3, I was looking at 4. On the 3rd day, you have 14 altogether, right? And then you're left with 10 mishmarot, and those split into the 14 in the way we said. On day number 4, you end up with shlosham makrivim shnayim shnayim v'ashar echad echad, right? Each time you're going to go down in how many people do 2 and go up in how many people do 1. Okay, you're going to go up by 2, right? You can see this line. In the first one, 6 do 2, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. In the group of how many people do 1, it's going to go up by 2 every day. Okay, 2 do 1, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. Okay, so that's how it goes. B'chamishi shnayim makrivim shnayim shnayim hashar echad echad. B'shishi echad makriv shnayim hashar echad echad. On the 6th day, 1 does 2, and the rest do only 1. And b'shvi'i, what happens? We have 7 parim, 2 elim, 1 seirizim. That adds up to 10. How many are left? 14, because from 10 to 24, 14, and therefore everybody does one keves. B'shvi'i kulan shavin. So therefore everyone is equal on that day. Okay, because what do you see here? There's an imbalance on all the days because there's always someone who does 2 animals and everyone else does 1. On this day, everyone's equal. It's an interesting line, right? Maybe they're making the statement about equality or something, but everyone does the same. Bashmini. Okay, what happens on the 8th day? Sorry that I stopped sharing my screen. Let's go back. On the 8th day, we have a whole different numbering. We've learned about this. It has its own korban. 1 par, 1 ayil, 1 seirizim. That's 3. And 14 kfasim. So what does it tell us? Chazru l'payis kibbur regalim. We go back and do a new lottery system. By the way, there's a whole debate among the commentaries how the lottery worked here. Was it random or did it go in order? Does it mean lottery just meaning everyone gets a turn and we just go by the list and we go in the order that they normally went? Some people think we go in order, but we start not with the first one on the list, but we start with the one whoever's job it was that week to be on the job. And we start with them and we go in order. So there's a whole debate about how exactly this lottery was done on all the days of Sukkot. Not necessarily Shmini Atzeret, there maybe because there were so few, they just kind of put everyone together. Amru, now back to Sukkot. How did it work with the parim? With the parim, it worked that if you did it today, you got a par, you wouldn't be allowed to be in the pious for the next day. Now, it's not 100% true, because in day number 1 and day number 2, there's 13 and 12. That's 25. That's more. Someone obviously needs to get a repeat. But the point is, we go straight through all of the people, all the mishmarot, all the groups. And only when everyone's gotten a turn, do you then get a chance to go again. Okay. So we make sure, this is classic when you're having a game, right? We make sure everyone gets a turn first. And then only after do you start doing the person gets again. Okay. And if you remember, we talked about that altogether when we look at the bulls, because the bulls were kind of, people really wanted that because they were the special ones of the holiday because they kept going down every day. And we'll talk about their significance in a little bit because everyone wanted the bulls. So how did it work? So we basically keep this order going. That meant that everybody got 24 times 3 is 72. And there were 2 people who didn't get a turn. So now we're going to talk about that. So the Gemara says, Nemam anitim Rebbe below Rabbanan. The Mishnah had said that when we get to the 8th day, we go back to the original lottery. It sounds like we start from scratch. What would have been logical? That if we have a bull offering on Shmini Atzeret, and we have 2 groups that didn't get a chance to do their 3rd bull offering, because everyone got 3 except for 2, wouldn't you start with them? So, in fact, there's a machloka Rebbe and Rabbanan about it. Titania, par haba b'shmini, the par from the 8th day, b'tchila mefaisin alav. You start from scratch, divrei Rebbe. Chachamim omrim, echad mishnei mishmarot delo shilshu, one of the 2 that didn't get to go 3 times, baparim, with the bull offerings, oseoto, you start with one of those, okay? So it sounds like, because our Mishnah said, on the 8th day, you go back to the pious like in all the other holidays, it sounds like you start from scratch. Sounds like Rebbe. So now they say, no, afilu tema Rabbanan. We can explain it according to Rabbanan. Because atu shemesh marot lo afu sebai. The fact that they said you do a lottery according to the rabbis, but you do it with the 2 groups that are left. Because imagine, right, there's only 2 groups left and one gets chosen over the other. They'll have a whole ruckus and angry and fighting. So you must do a lottery there. So when it says, Chazru lefayis kibur galim, what they mean is they do a lottery between the 2 that didn't get a chance to do the 3rd bull offering. So theoretically, you could explain it according to the rabbis, even though it definitely doesn't sound like it's the pshat. Kiman azla hadatanya, according to is the following Braita. We're now back to this machloket Rebbe and the rabbis. Do you start the pious from the beginning for Shmini Atzeret, or do you take one of the 2 and do a pious between them, the ones who didn't get the bull offerings for the 3rd time? So what about this Braita? Kol mishmarot shonot u'mishalshot. This is exactly what we said. Each of them get to go twice and 3 times. Chutz mishnei mishmarot sheshonot ve'em mishalshot. Other than 2 that only get to go twice but don't get to go 3 times. Nema Rebbe v'lo Rabbanan. This sounds like it's Rebbe and not the rabbis, because according to the rabbis, only one didn't get to go 3 times because he got to go on Shmini Atzeret. One of them went on Shmini Atzeret. So really only one was left without a 3rd chance. So they say, no, afilu tema Rabbanan, my lo shilshu b'parei hachag. You could say, no, they didn't get to go 3 times when it came to the bulls of Chag Sukkot, not relating to the bulls of Shmini Atzeret, in which case it could be Rabbanan also. But then the Gemara says, "Umay kamashmalan." What's it teaching us? Simple math. That 70 is not divisible by 3, and there'll be a remainder of 2. We don't need you to tell us that. We know that we can do simple math. So hakamashmalan, it must be coming to teach you. It comes to teach you that this Braita comes to teach you the same thing we saw in the last line of our Mishnah, which is we make sure that it could be that maybe if it's all random and every day we start from scratch, then theoretically someone could get 4 or 5 and someone could get 1, right? The point is, no, we do it very organized so that it ends up that 70 divides exactly 3, 3, 3, right? Other than everyone gets 3, other than 2 people. That we do the order, we make sure everyone gets first, then we make sure everyone gets second, then we make sure everyone gets third. This reminds us a lot about Yomi, about how organized you need to be and how much they did this to decrease fighting in the temple. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Hani shivim parim keneged me. What's the purpose of these 70 parim? Keneged shivim umot. They're because of the 70 nations. Okay, why is this? Parich, okay, so well, really the idea here is that the shivim amot also need rain, also need to pray for rain. Today I brought the verses from Zechariah that we talked about the other day, which talks about the, everyone left from all the Gentiles that come to Yerushalayim. They will come every year. They're going to celebrate the Sukkot holiday. Whoever doesn't go, this is a very interesting thing because rain can't rain on certain people and not other people. But basically, the rain won't get to them. And as the idea here is that the 70 nations is the end of Zechariah, chapter 14. The nations also need to pray for rain. Sukkot is a prayer, is a holiday of rain. You can hear a lot more about this in Dr. Yael Ziegler's Shiur tomorrow from the Siyum about the importance of rain and the connection between the holiday of Sukkot. And therefore, we have these Shiv'im Umot. We bring Parei HaChag keneged these Shiv'im Umot who also need rain, just like we do. Rain is the universal need. Par Yechidi Lama. Why do we have one bull offering then on Shmini Atzeret? So now we have a nice image. It's for us. We're the single nation. We're going to bring a parable of a regular king. Make for me a big festive meal, he says to his people. On the last day of the party, he says to his beloved one, make me a small meal. I want to have just you. Right? That's why they're explaining also why there's much fewer sacrifices, because it's just for you. It's both one keneged, the one umah, but also one, you only need one bull offering because we don't need a huge meal. It's just you and me. One more line about this and the Gentiles. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, oy lahem lovdei kochavim she'ibdu ve'en yodim ma she'ibdu. It's not just us who lost the temple, but the Gentiles also lost the temple. They don't even know what they lost. In other words, the altar atoned for them. We every year sacrifice for them and they got atonement. And now they don't have anything to atone for them. It's a way of saying the loss of the temple is not just for us, it's for them as well. New Mishnah. Now we're going to talk about dividing up the portions to the mishmarot that came on that week, right, on the holiday. There were 3 times a year on the Shlosha Regalim, the 3 holidays, that all the people who came, all the families they would divide evenly the Imurei HaRegalim. We're going to have to see in the Mishnah in the Gemara, what exactly that means. Usually Imurei Regalim are the parts that we burn on the altar, which can't possibly be because they don't get that. It burns on the altar. So it's a little tricky word. And they also split the showbread that week, the bread that they had, that they switched every week, that usually would be divided between the Mishmar Nechnas and the Mishmar Yotzei, the ones going in and the ones going out, which we're going to talk about more tomorrow. But on that week, they would all share the bread as well, which is really chametz, matzah bread. Okay, it's not chametz. We'll talk about that in a minute. But atzeret, when they also have the shtei alechem, which was actually chametz bread, okay, it's one of the few times they have chametz in the mikdash. Omer lo, everyone gets a portion of that, and they get a portion of the lechem apanim, and they're told, Heilach matzah, heilach chametz. Here's your matzah, here's your chametz. Some people say, the idea here is they want to tell you, you can't trade. You can't say, I want 2 portions of lechem apanim, and I'll take none of the shtei alechem. No, they each get a portion of this and a portion of that. It's divided equally, and that way also no one can complain, oh, I got 2 portions of that, I really wanted that one, blah, blah, blah. Mishmar shezmano kavua. Now, what happens if it's your job that week to be on the mishmar? So you actually end up in a good situation. Why is that? Hu makriv tmidim nidarim unidavot. You're in charge. That mishmar whose job it was to come that week, they bring the korbanot tamid. They bring all the nidarim and nidavot, all the voluntary offerings. Why is this a big deal? Because normally people did their voluntary offerings when they came on Aliyah Regel, so they were way more than normal, which means that they kind of lucked out by getting a lot more than everybody else. Ushar korbanot tzibor, and all the other korbanot tzibor there are, like shalmei simcha that the people bring for the holidays. Also, they're going to get extras on that. Umakriva takol, and they sacrifice all of that. What makriva kol is, we're going to see. They obviously don't sacrifice the regalim ones, the special like the par and the ayel and the kfasim and all that. So what does that mean, and what's it adding? That we'll see tomorrow. Imurei ha-regalim shel gavoa aninu. What do you mean imurei ha-regalim? That goes up to God. They don't get that. Rav Chisda masha amor b'regalim imureh, from the lashon of what was told to us about the regalim, meaning the special sacrifices for that holiday. Tanu Rabbanan, minayin shekol mishmarot shabot b'mureh regalim. How do we know that they all split this? Talmud Lomar, and here's a strange section in the Torah, which is in Sefer Dvarim, which is addressed to the Levi, but it seems clear it's talking to the Kohen because it talks about the parts of the animals that they get, and the Levi doesn't get that. So even though it's called a Levi there, it's really talking about Kohanim, and it says, you can come whenever you want to the temple and serve. Now, we just said you don't really come whenever you want. You only come twice a year and the week that you're supposed to. Now, of course, in the Torah, it didn't exist exactly like that. But what do the rabbis say? Maybe it means all year long. You can come whenever you want. And then you can serve. And if you serve, you get to get some of the meat. Talmud Lomar, it says in one of your gates. So they say, when is this true that you can come whenever you want and serve? It's a time when all the Jews go through one gate. What's that? When they all come in Aliyah LaRegel. So only in the Regalim are you allowed to come whenever you want. That's where we learn it from. And then those verses say, and when you come and you serve, you get to eat the portions. Okay. Safrai says one thing I want to end with this, that this Mishnah, okay, might be describing an ideal about the whole splitting, this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah, really, about how many numbers and how it all worked. And it's possible not all the mishmarot came. And it could be that this Mishnah is coming to say it's worth your while to come because you'll get food and you'll get, right? It's incentivizing the Kohanim to come work, because you can imagine they might have been lazy. They might not have wanted to come on Aliyah LaRegel. And if they don't come, then who's going to bring all these sacrifices? So it was a way of incentivizing people to come. I mean, obviously the halacha is like this, but they could be talking about this a way to say, we really want you to come to the temple to make sure that you come, you'll get, right? The way they divided up the portions might also be as a way of incentivizing people to come to the temple, because you'll get more parts than, that you would think. With that, we will end for today. And as I said, tomorrow, our Siyum, looking forward to seeing you all there or having you listen on your own time. Have a good day, everyone.